So today we're having a very special episode about Destiny, specifically the Destiny beta, which Bungie released recently for the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. Greg and I both had an opportunity to play it. I played a crap ton more than he did.
I thought we were special. Like, oh, we're getting in on the beta Destiny.
Mm-mm.
But not only were we not special, but like literally anybody and their mother could get into this thing.
By the end.
And when you sign up, it gives you 4 extra codes to just give to people.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you want to play beta? Come on.
I read a really good article about how the Destiny beta was like the best marketing ploy ever. And the guy writing the article pretty much like had my exact word for word opinions on the whole thing. Like, before the beta had come out, I didn't know a ton about Destiny. What I had seen wasn't impressing me. I didn't fully understand the game, what was going on, the story. I really knew very little about it, and what I had seen wasn't grabbing me. And then the beta came out, and I was like, well, all right, I'll try it out. And so it came out first for PlayStation, because PlayStation is like the sort of, that's their main platform, and the others are sort of secondary to it.
Because PlayStation paid them for it.
Okay. I don't know. Do we actually know that's a fact?
That is a fact.
Okay.
Yeah, PlayStation paid for extra Destiny stuff.
Okay. So I got kind of, having an Xbox One, I didn't have immediate access to it. So there was a couple days first where it was only for PlayStation users. So I jumped on Twitch. This is kind of my first experience with Twitch as well. It kind of brought me into that rabbit hole.
Which excites me.
Yeah.
Because, this is a quick aside, realistically, I would say 90% of my TV watching at this point is Twitch. I stream it through my Xbox. So I'm glad that you're joining in.
I'm easing into it, but I figured, well, I can't play it yet, but I'll check out some of these, see if somebody's streaming it, and maybe get a little more familiar with the game. And so that was sort of my introduction, is watching other people play. At first, it was mainly just watching multiplayer and getting a sense of like what's going on and the weapons and everything like that. And then I finally got access to it and was immediately enamored with it. And your experience has been a little bit different.
It has. But I'm not going to say it's so much the game's fault as probably my fault. The biggest thing is that, so Dan has the Xbox One, I have the PS4.
But you will have an Xbox One. You pre-ordered this for the Xbox One.
I pre-ordered this for the Xbox One because in my brain I'm going to save up my money and get an Xbox One by the time it comes out. But who knows if that's going to actually happen or not. What has always made the Xbox stand apart from the PlayStation is its multiplayer functionality and quite simply just how easy it is to use. Xbox Live is an intuitive platform for people to play video games together. PlayStation has never gotten that right, and they still haven't gotten that right. So on the PS3, you didn't have to pay for PlayStation to be able to use their online functionality. For the PS4, you do. And I play my PS4 so infrequently that I have not paid for PlayStation Plus. So while I was playing Destiny, it wouldn't let me party up with anybody. It wouldn't let me get into a chat with anybody to like discuss with them what's going on or anything like that.
That was actually, and we'll get into that into more detail, but the whole chat functionality stuff and basically grouping up with people was one of the biggest gripes on the Destiny subreddit.
Well, maybe I have a misunderstanding then. So I went out on some sort of mission in Destiny.
You were in Old Russia.
Yeah. And another dude showed up, and he sent me like a message, like a, hey, let's party up thing. And then when I tried to accept the party up message, it said I had to pay for PlayStation Plus.
Okay.
So am I mistaken to assume that you could actually party up with people and like chat and stuff?
So I still don't have a full grasp on this myself. So there are fire teams, and then separate from that, there's just the regular Xbox Live chat. Like you could send people a party invite. Like there's that, and then there's the fire team situation. And I haven't fully gotten a grasp on the fire teams. I joined one with somebody where they sent me a fire team invite, and what it did was it brought me out of the map. It loaded, and then it brought me back in, and I was connected with them. They weren't talking, so I didn't chat with them. In theory, I think at that point I would have been able to. People have been complaining that the ability basically to communicate and team up with people is a little clumsy.
So maybe it wasn't just the PlayStation. It might just be a beta issue.
I don't even know if it's a beta issue. I mean, this game is like a month from launch. I think there's very little that's going to get changed by the time it gets released. But if there was one like resounding comment on Reddit about Destiny, it was this game needs better communication ability.
Interesting.
But before we get too deep into it, let's brief people a little bit on what this game is, a little bit of the background. So Bungie, previous developers who did the Halo series, Halo 1, 2, 3, and Reach.
And ODST.
And ODST. They did not do Halo 4. That was 343 Industries.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like their new big project that they're working on now that they have split from Microsoft, correct?
Mm-hmm. They now work for Activision.
Okay. So this is how I described this game to somebody else in text. So this game is a first-person shooter. It's MMO-esque, and I'll get back to that in a second, what that really means. It's fantasy guised as science fiction, sort of like Star Wars. You're protecting Earth's last city from encroaching aliens. There was a period of exploration where we kind of settled our entire solar system through the assistance of something called the Traveler. That's what it's called, right? And that's a big orb that is floating above the planet Earth right now. Then these aliens came and pushed us back to Earth, pushed us back to our last final city, which is being protected by the Traveler. It appears to be dead or non-communicative, and its sort of light and energy and power is wielded by these people called Guardians. They are able to travel outside of the city, fight these aliens, and sort of bring the fight to their doorstep. And you also have a companion. They're referred to as ghosts, which is essentially like a combination between Cortana and 343 or Guilty Spark. I mean, anyway, basically this game is a combination of Halo, Mass Effect, Knights of the Old Republic, and Skyrim. It's got Borderlands. It's MMO-esque in that when you load into a map, whether you're exploring or doing missions, there will be other people there. But it's limited in that like there's not like thousands of people on a server. There's like 20 or something like that. But you'll see them running around, doing their own thing sometimes, running past you because they've got other missions that they're working on. So you sort of cross paths with people oftentimes. You can help them out. You can shoot what they're shooting at. You can get involved. You can just totally ignore them. There's no obligation to get involved. And so each area will have like there'll be like a map which will have multiple different sections, so you can kind of get from one area to the next, and it's relatively seamless getting from one section. And you can do story missions, which they have a beginning and an end, and there's sort of like a point to it, and you select a difficulty, or you can just explore. And there's these large maps that you're just sort of free to wander around and fight these little squads of enemies that are kind of scattered about that are constantly respawning. The game feels a lot like Halo, which should come as no surprise. These guys worked on Halo for a long time. But that sort of Star Wars fantasy element is definitely coming through in a way that it didn't in Halo, appropriately, because that's not what Halo was trying to do. And there are three classes. You have the Warlock, the Titan, and the Hunter.
What did you play as?
I played as the Hunter the entire time. Because so the Titan is kind of like your strong soldier, sort of balanced, sort of strong character person. The Warlock, I guess they wield additional powers. I guess I don't fully have a grasp on them.
Maybe in the full game it's a little more fleshed out.
Yeah, they're supposed to be akin to like wizards and magic users, I guess. And then the Hunter is sort of, I guess, your rogue thief kind of character. He's big on, knife attacks and sniping, and he's not the strongest, but he's quick and he's agile. I played as him because
I think that's what I picked as well.
Yeah, that's what I tend to gravitate towards, regardless of what the game is. And then you pick a class, and then you pick a species, which doesn't really have a bearing on anything other than your aesthetics. There's humans, exos, which are robots, and then these they're called enlightened, I think, or something like that. They're sort of human-esque, and I don't remember what their backstory is. There's a whole universe that Bungie has created for this. So it's just like Halo, where you can kind of go down that slippery slope of that rabbit hole of information. If you end up on the Destiny wiki, I'm sure you'll be there for a while. So in the beta, they had old Russia, and you have your kind of like your main mission is to acquire a faster than light drive, I guess, so that you can travel to other colonies and get outside of Earth, basically. So that's the majority of the beta. They towards the end, for 2 hours, they let us go to the moon where we had a colony.
Was that cool?
It was really cool, and actually, the really neat thing about it is, the first map, the one in Russia, had multiple levels. I think there were 4 or 5 levels, and the moon has multiple levels, but they only unlocked one of them, I think. And there was no explore option, so you couldn't just go anywhere. But what you could do is pick that first level and then ignore what you were supposed to do and then just explore anyway. And that's what everybody did, and it was so much fun watching people discover all this stuff on the moon that, I mean, Bungie knew people would just go do that,
right.
But it was just it just seemed like a very organic thing to happen. And so I ended up, there's all these different alien species, and they don't all get along. Like, you'll come across 2 non-player character groups that are attacking each other, and that's fun. And you can sort of run through the middle of their fray and keep going.
I always appreciate that in a game.
Yeah.
I like the idea that not everybody gets along, and that you're not always part of what's happening.
Yeah.
I don't always have to be the guy in a video game. So
yeah.
I appreciate that.
The thing that was really the story mission for the moon was fine, but exploring was so much fun because I didn't really know where I was going, and you don't have a map. You have a general map sort of feeling when you pick your story level, but you don't have an in-game map really. You have radar, but you don't really have a map. And one of the alien species is called the Hive, and they have these foot soldiers that are kind of like the Flood. They're zombie-esque. They're big on hand-to-hand attacking, and they're sort of mindless creatures. And then there's stronger ones that are more powerful and not as stupid. And I ended up in this underground hive temple thing with multiple levels, and I kept wandering through it. And clearly it's part of later story missions, but I don't know what they are. So I'm going through and fighting these guys, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know where this is leading me, and I actually missed it, but apparently there's these 2 moon ogres, which are these big, nasty-looking brutes, which I didn't come across for some reason, but other people did, and I saw pictures, and I just love that you can just explore and find this stuff. One of the other cool things is you always have access to a vehicle. It's like a speeder bike. It doesn't have weapons, but you can just spawn that at any point.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's fun. It makes traveling a little bit easier.
So how big were the areas in general? The one area I played, it didn't strike me so much as an open world as sort of a quarantine off arena, a big arena, but still an arena. Yeah,
I had heard previously that Bungie has sort of said, if you can see it, you can go there. That's not quite accurate. It's smaller than that. It's pretty big. Each area is reasonably sized. It's there are multiple arenas all connected. Each arena is appropriately sized.
Could you maybe compare it to Borderlands? Because Borderlands is also an arena, but it's still pretty big areas.
Borderlands is bigger. Borderlands is huge. The maps in Borderlands are expansive. There's a lot of empty space in Borderlands. I feel like this doesn't have that. It's not as empty. There's a lot more stuff and derelict things, and the environment is more filled in. So it's smaller, but there's more going on. Like if you let me put it this way: if you are in one of like old Russia has got like let's say 5 different arenas all connected, and each one's a little bit different, and you know the different story missions kind of in each one. If you're on one side of the arena, in theory, you could snipe somebody on the other side.
Okay.
So that's kind of the scale. If there was an enemy on the far side within sight distance, you could probably snipe him, but it would be a long shot.
Interesting.
So there's what people are referring to, and all the stuff I've been talking about right now is kind of referred to as P versus E, player versus environment. And then, of course, there's the whole multiplayer side of things, which is P versus P. And that I'm still sort of getting a handle for. There's like different modes to that, in the sense that it doesn't. So in this game, well, I'm getting ahead of. There's so much of this game, so it's kind of like an RPG because your character levels up. You similar to Borderlands, you level up, you get better armor, you get better guns, you get better stats, things like that. You can invest in different abilities, and when you go to the multiplayer, your level doesn't matter. Like you're on an even playing field with people, but like you bring your weapons to the fight, but they even the weapons out. So like if one person has like a level, like a gun that is equivalent to what a level 2 character would have, and there's a level 20 person, it evens out so that they're on an even playing field. Like there's different stats for the guns, and like impact makes a difference, but like other stats I think are evened out.
I don't know how I like that.
Yeah, it's weird. So you've got your main weapon, your secondary weapon, and then your super weapon, which is like a rocket launcher or like a super heavy machine gun. So here's the interesting thing. So you always start off with your primary ammunition, but the secondary ammunition, so for me that was my sniper rifle, and your super weapon, which for me was my rocket launcher, you have to pick that up in-game. Like the ammo gets dropped, or there's crates where you can pick it up from. So you don't always necessarily have that ammunition on you, which is weird. So like you're sort of scrambling for ammo sometimes. The maps are pretty big. They're fun. There's vehicles. It's Halo-esque, but
so let me ask you a question.
Okay.
How much experience did you have with this PvP?
A few hours at most. I mean, I kind of got a sense of what it entailed, but I wasn't good at it.
And it's all in game, like.
Yeah, the idea is so it's called the Crucible, and it's kind of like Guardians who are testing their abilities. In a sense, it's sort of like a virtual thing,
right?
Because you're not really killing each other. That's kind of the idea.
Do you think it would have been suited better if it was outside of your regular character?
No, I don't think that would make a difference.
No? Because,
No.
Like, just say, look, we have multiplayer in this game. It has nothing to do with the single player. You go through it, and it's a completely separate map. Or, a separate menu. You can access it from the main menu. Your character has nothing to do with the multiplayer.
I see where you're going with that. And that's I feel like that's like a very Halo way of looking at it. But this game is about like in Halo, you don't level up in Halo. Like you are who you are.
Right.
This is about like you have your character, and you pick all your different armor components. You pick those, and they all have stats, and it matters. You can change the color of these things. You can, if you do well in the multiplayer, you can eventually like unlock like personalized emblems and other stuff. So there's sort of like a cross-pollination between the two, and I quite frankly I think it's pretty interesting to be able to bring all your weapons and swap them out in-game. Like in a match, you can swap out your guns. So I typically played, like there's a scout rifle, which is semi-automatic and usually has a pretty decent zoom and accuracy for like mid to sort of long-range fighting. And then for the secondary, I usually use a sniper rifle, but sometimes I would use a shotgun. And like you can at any point you can swap it out. It's kind of fun. So you can bring your whole arsenal with you.
Right.
I feel like it takes some getting used to. So the multiplayer is generally framed around there's 3 points, A, B, and C, and then you, if you control them, I think you earn more points for your kills, and the point is that you want to have the most points when the match is over.
That's a unique take on it.
Yeah, so there's definitely an incentive to get the points, but there's also an incentive to get the kills. So I feel like in that sense it's a little bit more balanced because it's you know what you have to do, but you still have options. And it's fun seeing people work together. I feel like there's so many options for what you can do, like between your main gun, your secondary gun, grenades, your when you kind of get supercharged, that happens in the main story game too. I don't know what the other classes do, but the hunter pulls out like this crazy golden gun that shoots this like crazy shot that destroys people. It's a lot of fun when you get that in the multiplayer, and like especially if it happens at a really like convenient time, because it's hard to kill that person. So there have been moments where like I'm outnumbered and I just happen to get it at the right time. Like say I got a kill and it like bumped me up to get it, and then I switch into it, take a couple of guys out, and it feels really good. On the same token, when you're on the receiving end of that, it really sucks. But I feel like it's really dynamic. There's so much going on. Whereas like in Halo, it was like bullets, headshots. But like there's so much else going on here. At times, it was a little overwhelming. Like I don't know what buttons to press. I don't know what to do. But the more I played, I started getting into it a little bit more. So that's a lot of talking about Destiny. It's overwhelming, but there's a learning curve. There's a lot to this game. The story has really grabbed me. The kind of social aspect of the game has grabbed me. So while the ability to speak with other people is limited, a lot of people have asked for like proximity speaking. So like if you're close enough, you can talk to the person. Like especially in the tower. And the tower is a kind of equivalent to the Citadel in Mass Effect, where it's kind of like a safe zone where there's no fighting, and you know it's like there's shops and people to talk to. It's kind of like the central hub. And a lot of people just hang out there and run around and act goofy, and you use your D-pad to signal to people. So you can point at them or point at other things. You can salute. You can sit down, which is useless. I don't know why anybody has that. And then you can use the dance option. And
which is hysterical.
Yeah, each class does a different dance, which is funny. And you'll get like these impromptu dance parties where like multiple people all just start dancing together. Like I had like 15 people dancing around an area once. It was great. And they're all doing like, they're just doing their dances. So there's like some kind of funny social aspects of it. I saw a YouTube video that somebody posted of the multiplayer where people on opposing sides. One guy was on one side of a window, and it was like it was on the moon, and there was a long hallway that had a window, and on the other side was the outside part of the moon. And the guy was standing on the inside looking out. The enemy ran up to him. He saluted him. The guy saluted back, and then one of them ran to the door and they fought each other. But it was just such a perfect moment that like you can do that. They ran up to each other and were like, "Oh, what do we do now?" And they had this kind of like nonverbal communication. It's great.
I appreciate that.
I really like that.
I like watching people adapt socially in video games. It's really unique. I don't know much about MMOs. The only one I think I ever played was City of Heroes. But there's a lot of things that go on in MMOs that I always find intriguing. I like, oh man, why can't I remember it? Eve. Eve Online.
Oh yeah, where they have these like humongous space battles.
Yeah, Eve Online is essentially, it's gotten to this point where it's just run by various mafias. And people do so much with real money on that. And every now and then you'll read about a giant space battle that goes on.
Yeah, oftentimes over something really insignificant, which is the best part.
But people will lose legitimately like $50,000 real-world dollars in these space battles. And it's just awesome.
Because of all the investment they put into those ships in the first place that they're losing, or?
Well, no, here's what happens. I don't know if this is going to make it into this podcast, but this is really interesting, so I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay.
Basically, in EVE Online, you can basically mine this currency in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But
virtual currency.
Yeah. But you can sell that virtual currency in the real world.
Okay.
So people can use it back in the game.
Okay.
So, for example, this is rough.
And then they would use that to like buy ships and armaments and things like that.
I mine 1,000
virtual
Eve
coins.
dollars.
Yeah.
I can sell that on eBay for 10 real life dollars, and then whoever buys it can go back into Eve and buy a new refrigerator for their ship.
Yeah.
But what winds up happening is, like, the last time one of these giant space battles happened, there were super rare plans for another ship on one of the ships being, like, couriered. And one mafia attacked this little ship who called in for reinforcements, so the other mafia jumped in, and this giant space battle ensued.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. And the value of that ship, plus all, like, the stuff on the other ships, it was like $50,000 that was lost in this battle. That's insane and awesome.
Yeah.
So when you tell me about this stuff in Destiny, that excites me. I like watching people interact through a new medium like that.
So, aside from all like the quirky social stuff going on in the game, I mean, I've meant this should come as no surprise. We've talked about this before. Story is really important to me. We touched a little bit on the story, but basically the idea is that we are now in kind of a dark age. We have some advanced technology, obviously. We still have the ability to travel to these other planets in our solar system. We still have some advanced tech. But like it seems like everything is kind of worn down and not as nice as it would have been originally. Like the description for one of the I was going to buy. I had the ability to buy a new spaceship if I wanted to. I think, or I was looking at them anyway in the spaceport to look at them, and it mentioned that this is a refurbished version of like the original, and it's it's not as nice as it would have been back in its heyday or something. Like that is what's going on here. You're at your last remaining city. You can look down over the edge of the tower, and you see the city below, and it looks like a giant sprawling shanty town, and I don't know if that's what they're intending, and I didn't spend that much time looking at it, but every time I kind of peeked over the side, I was like, that looks like a dump down there, which could totally be the case. I mean, if the remnants of humanity are all cornered in this one spot, it's entirely possible. But so there's this orb that's floating over the city, and that's kind of it holds the light, and all these aliens kind of represent the darkness, which is encroaching on us and pushing us closer and closer towards extinction. But there's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot to explore. There's a lot to figure out, and they've sort of sprinkled the breadcrumbs for me, and that's what I like. So I'm really interested in seeing where they take us with the missions. And I feel like this is, they're going to get multiple games out of this property. And so I'm sort of anticipating like this is the new Halo. And when I heard it was a little more kind of fantasy, like in the sense that Star Wars is, at first I was like, that doesn't really do much for me. Even though as much as I love Star Wars, fantasy is just not my thing. But I don't know, man. There's like a feel to this game, and I can't quite describe it, but it's different than Halo, and I love it.
I mean, you've certainly intrigued me. My only real issue is that everything you've said sounds super interesting to me. I didn't see any of that when I was playing the game. To me, it all seemed, what's the right word?
Bland?
No, not so much bland, whereas I've seen it all before. When I was playing the game, I felt like I've played this game before. I fought like a super boss who crawled out of a pipe, and he brought some dudes with him, and I'm like, this feels like Borderlands to me. And when I'm running around the Citadel, what is it really called? The hub?
The tower.
When I'm running around the tower.
Is that what it's called? I'm forgetting all the names now. It's all these weird words
call
for
it
everything.
The Citadel.
That's fine.
When I'm running around the Citadel, I felt like okay, this is Mass Effect with more people. Or it reminded me of my brief time playing City of Heroes, where there's one central dude who gives out missions, and there's 15 dudes standing around that one guy, like 15 players, standing around this one guy, and we're all talking to him, but it just looks really stupid because it's a bunch of dudes staring off into space. It didn't strike me as this is gaming of the future. It seemed to me like this is at best, refined experience of something I've already done before.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I think, and maybe they didn't actually do this, but I could certainly see somebody sitting down and being like, what are our favorite games of the last, 5 or 10 years? Halo, Borderlands, Mass Effect, Skyrim. Okay, what are the best parts of each one of those games? They make, a list of, bullet points. They're like, let's put all of that in a game and come up with an original story. And that, to me, is what Destiny is. So it's not necessarily original, but I feel like they've refined all those games and distilled them down to their best parts and then put it all into one. And I love that. Because all those games, I haven't played... If this was not coming out, I probably would consider getting Skyrim and finally giving that a chance, just because I think it's starting to appeal to me a little bit. But now I've got Destiny, so I don't need to do that.
You still have a month.
Yeah, I'm not going to play Skyrim for a month. That's silly. But it's not, revolutionary, but it does so many things so well. All the gripes everybody had were such nitpicky things between the Bungie forums and Reddit. And some of there were moments where I felt like the game was like a love letter to video game enthusiasts. There was one of the missions I was playing. You end up fighting. I think his name is Sepix Prime or something like that. And there's one of the Fallen or one of the other species. So I mentioned the Hive. The Fallen are sort of an insectoid race kind of group, and they have these giant floating orbs. So there's regular ones which you can encounter. I mean, they're kind of like the mini bosses, but this guy was huge, and he's basically a giant floating robotic eyeball. And there were moments where I felt like this is like a level out of Contra. This is ridiculous, but I love it, and it was fun. And in addition to that, I felt like the regular sort of foot soldiers are not the brightest, and it could be that that's just a really hard thing for people to program still. I don't know where that comes from. They're never as smart as actual players are. But their defensive AI I found pretty impressive. You shoot at a guy and everybody else scatters for cover. I found that kind of impressive. And they'll generally stay behind cover. You might be able to get a shot on them, but they're pretty good about staying, and then you have to move in for the kill. I would have a sniper rifle out, and then I would be like, damn it, now I got to go chase these guys down.
I would say I agreed with that. I was definitely impressed by some of the AI there. They would flank me.
Yeah.
And they would stay hidden. That's right.
And I distinctly remember one moment where I was fighting Sepix Prime, and they were throwing wave after wave of guys at me, and I was actually playing this with two other guys that I didn't know. We had sort of just moved along and done it together the whole time. Those two guys were dead, and we were in an area where if all three of you die, you have to start that section over. So that is a component of some of these missions sometimes. I was the last guy standing, and I was getting overwhelmed, and I went for cover behind some derelict car, and they all chased after me. I was behind a car trapped in a corner by a building, and there's nowhere for me to go, and they just swarmed me, and I was like, that's impressive. They took advantage of the situation and knew what they were doing, because a lot of times, the same thing happened in Halo. There's they come at you and they back away, and they come at you and it's they're not really aggressive. It gets rare to really find that. These guys, when you're down, they step on you, and they really take advantage of it. Before the beta came out, I had planned to probably get Destiny, because I was starting to hear a little bit more about it right before the beta. But leading up to that, I was like, nah. I honestly, I didn't even know that there was the whole story. I didn't know any of that. I just thought it was a multiplayer game, and we're sort of fantasy. And I was like, what is this? This is dumb. playing the beta convinced me 100% to pre-order this game. And it also, I think, helped me because of how I am as a player to get not necessarily involved, but at least keep an eye on Reddit and Twitch and getting a little bit more involved in the Destiny community. People pointed out really interesting things on Reddit between either suggestions, because it's a beta and a lot of people think they have a lot of great ideas, and some of them were dumb and some of them weren't, but it was like, oh yeah, that's a really clever idea. So it gave me like an appreciation for the community for being so clever and having good suggestions. But on the other side, people just posted a lot of really interesting stuff that they found in the game, or glitches, or really, really cool, rare armor that they came across. And I found that made it a lot more enjoyable for me to sort of like, it's like all of a sudden out of nowhere, this gaming community cropped up. And they're all interested and they all love it just as much as everybody else does. And that's a really cool thing. I really like that.
That to me is the most intriguing thing you've talked about. I love when a community comes together around games. And
I mean, maybe, I was, it's Reddit. I was only reading the top stuff that they had. I mean, it's not like a super huge subreddit, but, there's enough stories. Every day there was new stuff to look at. And the people seemed intelligent and engaged and interested and like they were excited about it, and that made me more excited for it. So if you're on the fence about this or you're not really sure about it, stop by Reddit. I think it's r/Destiny the game. Let me just double check that real quick. Yep. Destiny the game. And maybe check out some of the feeds on Twitch. I mean, obviously none of it's live right now. The beta's over, but plenty of people have videos. Give it a shot. I think this is going to be something big. I think this is the start of something really big.
I'm eager to play it with you.
That's the other thing too. We didn't even touch up on that. Almost everything I did mission-wise, there was like, except for fighting that giant robotic eye thing, like that was the end of a very long series of missions. I was with two other guys for most of that. Other than that, I did everything else by myself, which was not as much fun. It would have been much more enjoyable for us to do it together. And a good example of that, where I know that you and I would have had a fun time, is so Old Russia. It's crappy outside. There's derelict cars everywhere. It's a junk, crappy spot. It's like Borderlands. And but there's a lot of moments where you end up having to go into facilities, go underground, and fight guys in rooms and stuff that are below ground. And the lighting's not very good. So you start off fighting the Fallen, who are those insect guys, and then eventually you end up encountering the Hive. And when you first encounter the Hive, you are in a room that is lit. The next room has no lights. And your ghost, the little robot that's floating around following you as your narrator, which Peter Dinklage does the voice of, by the way, he's got a flashlight on him, and it's always pointing in front of you, but it's a shitty flashlight. And it's like the music amps up. And it was like one of those moments where it's like borderline survival horror, like what is going on here? And then these horrible creatures like come running at you, and I was like, oh my god! Like that's the moment where I'd be like, oh my god, Greg, help! And I really wish you were there for that, because we both would have been like, no, you go first. No, you go first. No, please, I insist, you. And I mean, I made my way through it, but it was scary as hell.
Just quickly, one interesting experience I did really have, and was surprised that it was cool. The front of the PS4 has a light on it, and that light reacted to what was happening in the game.
Really?
Yeah, and it was super cool.
Like,
so like when your flashlight goes on, the light in the front of your controller gets brighter.
Huh.
When you're dying, the light gets red.
Interesting.
It was so cool. And the first time I didn't even notice it. I'm like, did my light just get brighter? What's going on with that? And then the flashlight went off, and the light got dimmer. I'm like, oh my god. That's so cool.
That is really cool.
That was the first time, and this is so ridiculous, that I've owned a next. That was the first time that since buying a next gen system, I ever felt like I was having a next gen experience. And all it took was a light on the controller.
Something in theory they could have done back in like 1990.
Yeah, for sure. They may have even tried. That was just a really cool moment. Wrap up. Anything left?
I could keep going, but
I know you could.
I could talk another like 2 hours about this game, but I won't.
If you would like to talk more about Destiny with Dan, you can find him on Twitter What's your name? What's your new name?
At the Polygon 1.
Yes. Feel free to contact him because, boy, does he want to talk about this.
Or at Player 2. PLAYRTWO.
We don't need any more.
We need so much Destiny content. Like we want to be like the premier Destiny Twitter feed.
Oh my god!
If you have a Destiny thing,
if that happened,
post it on our Twitter. If we see that you've posted something about Destiny, I'll retweet it.
Yeah, he will. We should have a contest.
How many Destiny tweets can I make in a day?
Yeah, right.
You guys set the number. I'll beat it.
You can find me at killagreg17.
And you can find us at player2pressstart.com.
Next week, so a week from when you are listening to this right now, our next episode is going to be up, a regular scheduled Player 2 Press Start, where Dan and I talk about some old school arcade beat-em-ups and some new school arcade beat-em-ups.
Yeah.
I don't know how that conversation is going to turn out. Should be interesting.
And we are working on potentially having a guest on with us. So we'll see how that works out.
All right, stay tuned. Bye.
Bye. So wait, don't hit stop yet. Did you hit stop?
No.
Okay. So one of the funniest things that I've come across. So Peter Dinklage does the voice of the ghost who follows you around, and everybody refers to it now as Dinklebot, which I really enjoy.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
People were really upset about his voice acting, weren't they?
Some people said it wasn't very good. I guess I was fine with it. I wasn't like blown away.
You know what?
But I wasn't blown away by Cortana either, and she was still a great character.
What I think it might be is that he is so much like the Guilty Spark.
Yeah.
That the comparison is there no matter what, and I feel like it just doesn't hold a candle to the Guilty Spark. Like, there was something about the Guilty Spark that was memorable and unique and perfect. It was that combination of, like, cheery and morbid.
Well, he was psychotic.
The Guilty Spark was?
Yeah, he was out of his mind.
I never got that.
Oh, he was totally nuts.
I don't think he was. I think he had a mission that he followed.
No, he was like, oh, we have to turn on the array.
Yeah, but...
That's why he's nuts, because the Forerunners built him, and he knows that if he turns it on, he'll wipe out everything. And he's like, hum-de-dum, let's wipe out the universe.
I don't think that makes him nuts. He was programmed with a cheery disposition, and he was programmed with the job of saving the universe. The only way he knew how. That doesn't make him crazy. That just makes him following his commands.
Yeah, but I guess this is what I'm wondering is how intelligent of an AI is he? Because he has programming, but he is also an AI.
But at no point do I think he got any pleasure of, like, it wasn't like he was tricking the Master Chief into doing it.
No, I guess
he never lies.
I guess his lack of awareness is amusingly ridiculous.
I agree with that.
I guess that's a better way of putting it.
The Guilty Spark is just so memorable, and Dinklebot he's just another player. And I know the comparison isn't fair, but I think that's why people were upset.
Does Guilty Spark ever get destroyed? Does he towards the end of one of the games? Does he get?
He might be on the Ark when it gets blown up.
I don't remember what his final status was when we left off, but I wouldn't be disappointed if he got killed.
No, me neither.
He's a dick.
In a weird way, he's like the real villain of the Halo universe.
There's like a whole thesis here we could develop.
Yeah.
Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Okay. I would suspect, and I don't know this. This is total speculation, but if Dinklebot ended up like something happened to him halfway through the game, and he was sort of separated from you or damaged, and like you had to save him or something, it wouldn't surprise me if they worked that in. I mean, they did that with Cortana, multiple times, having to save her ass, her virtual naked ass. Wouldn't surprise me if they did it again with him, because it sort of makes them, he, at the beginning of the game, he's like floating around, and he seemed like he's kind of indestructible, the Dinklebot. When he comes and saves you, like he's like, oh, we gotta get out of here, but I think he's more concerned about you than himself. I mean, he's this sort of artificial entity of this giant orb, and I guess I kind of assumed he was mostly fine if something happened. but to make him sort of vulnerable, I think would make him more accessible as a character. And they've done it before. Bungie has a history of doing that. It wouldn't surprise me if they do it again.
Guilty Spark is dead.
Okay, I thought so. I thought that happened.
You hit him with the Spartan laser, and he blows up. And then his remains were on the last ring when that blew up.
Okay.
So he is dead.
There's still all those other ones, though, all those other monitors.
What was the other?
Was it Penitent Tangent?
Yes.
Is he the one that got captured by the Flood back during the... Was it during the Flood War with the Forerunners? Didn't he get captured and then, like, they turned him or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I really always enjoy everything that Bungie names stuff.
Yeah, they have good names. The Pillar of
Autumn.
Autumn. Yeah. Truth and Reconciliation.
Like, those are just
High Charity.
Awesome names.
Yeah. They knocked those out of the park.
Oh,
we didn't talk about this either. The music.
Oh, yeah, talk about the music.
The music in Destiny.
We have somehow created a editing hell for me.
Yes, I'm sorry. There's no like official soundtrack out for this, but somebody spent a lot of time extracting the music both from the alpha. Apparently, there was an alpha for this I had no clue about, and the beta, and they released that on Reddit. And we actually shared it on our Twitter feed. So if you go back a couple, you'll see a whole bunch of Destiny posts that I released in the past couple of days, and one of those is for the Reddit one for the music. Marty O'Donnell did the music, I believe, and he did the past stuff for Halo. So you know it's gonna be good. You know it's gonna be good before you download it, and of course it is. It totally lives up. And there's a lot of video game soundtracks where like amped up, kind of aggressive, sometimes angry, dark music that you don't necessarily want to listen to just to listen to. This game, even the regular like mission music, is good, and I enjoyed listening to it. In addition to just sort of the ambient, load screens and menu screens and stuff, which is also included in the soundtrack that he released. So I would give that a listen if that's your jam.
It is my jam.
I think that might be my last thing to talk about.
That's the last thing to say. Apparently, Guilty Spark isn't totally dead.
That should be at the very end of the podcast. After everything else.
It will be. All right, we're done.
We're done?
Yeah, let me just stop this and save this.
That was a lot of talking on my part.
I told you it was.
Is this going to be a shitty podcast?
Not if you're into Destiny.